Debbyites, I'm Rob Licuria, and I'm here with a cast of international guests for what I think is one of the most international Oscars that I've seen in a long time. So we have our token American Zach Laws. We have Luca Giliberti, and you are in Germany, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And Riley Chow, and who is in Canada, and obviously me in Australia. So we're in different corners of the world, and we're here to talk about the Oscar announcement that happened this morning. There's a lot to digest, a lot of good, a lot of bad, and I really want to start on a positive note, if possible. So I want to talk about what you each thought was your highlight, the thing that you just were most excited about. I'm going to go to you first, Zach. What do you think? What were you most excited about today?
Well, I was really happy to see, some, as you said, international Oscars. I mean, a lot of international filmmakers in the Best Director lineup. Alfonso Cuarón, who we all knew was getting in, but also Paweł Pawlikowski and Yorgos Lanthimos, who were both cited at BAFTA. They both managed to get in, alongside, Spike Lee. Brooklyn represent, and Adam McKay. So, I mean, that was a really nice surprise to kind of see them, reach out a little bit. And I think you have to kind of credit all of the new international filmmakers that they have added to the director's branch, as a part of their membership outreach. So, I mean, I know that was really great. And little things like seeing Black Klansmen show up in some below the line categories, seeing Roma show up with not one but two acting nominations, like that random nomination for cinematography for Caleb Deschanel for Never Look Away. Speaking of international films, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things to be positive about, I think.
And Riley?
Next year, when we have the Gold Derby Best of the Decade awards, Roma will get my vote for Best Director. So I'm happy to see it get a lot of nominations.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. But firstly, Luca, what do you think?
I think my favorite nominations were for Yalitza Aparicio and Marina de Tavira, because I think a lot of us were predicting Yalitza to get in, but Marina de Tavira was kind of a shock. And I think it speaks to the new voting body, and I think it speaks to the Academy in general. I mean, especially in a year where we have our president talking about building a wall, I think it was just very nice to have a movie about Mexico with Mexican actors to get so much recognition that it did. And then also just single nominations. I think Yorgos Lanthimos, I was very happy that he got in, because I think yesterday I was starting to doubt my prediction that he was going to get in. And I was starting to get very worried, but in the end, he got in, and The Favorite did very well with 10 nominations overall. And also Black Panther. It's not one of my favorite movies of the year, but I do respect it, and I think a lot of people are happy about that Best Picture nod.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to what you guys have just said, but I must say that when Marina de Tavira's nomination was announced, I was like, I couldn't believe it, and I was not that I predicted it at all. I didn't think it really was going to happen, but I mentioned that Alfonso Cuarón kept bringing up her name every time he had one of his acceptance speeches, and I was thinking, well, that could be on people's radar, and I'm so excited that they did that. What it meant for that category, obviously, was that a few women missed out. We'll talk about that in a second. I've been a Roma skeptic for a very long time. I am no longer a Roma skeptic. I firmly believe now that we all need to be very mindful that it is the front runner. We'll be talking about that later as well, because I think The Favorite and Black Klansman also did very well today. But I'm very excited about the international nominees. I'm so excited that Paweł Pawlikowski made it into director. Lucas Chow made it into cinematography. We saw Caleb Deschanel come out of nowhere, and cinematography looks like the European Film Awards. Like that's cool. I like that. I like it how the Oscars go their own way. So because I hate the ad nauseum repetition of the Oscar season. I love how the Oscars sometimes just say, screw that. This is what we actually like. You're not going to tell us what we like. So that's very, very cool. Okay, that all being said, there were a lot of people who missed out today. Okay, and there's a lot of disappointment. I'm going to go first because I've got a long list of things that I'm very disappointed about. The First Man Score, Dolly Parton, and John David Washington. But I'm most disappointed for Bradley Cooper. In retrospect, I'm probably not that surprised that he missed out because there's precedent for an actor-director directing himself who misses out. But he did such a great job with A Star Is Born. That whole movie is because of him, really, and he misses out. It really now just is the death knell for that film. It's probably winning for Shallow and nothing else, and I'm very, very disappointed for him. It obviously meant that there was room in the category for Yorgos Lanthimos, but very disappointing nonetheless. So that's where I'm at. Luca, what about you?
I think my biggest snub is, or the one I was most mad about, is Timothée Chalamet, because he gave an amazing performance in a so-so movie and elevated his material, and instead they nominated an 11-minute impersonation of Bush from Sam Rockwell. So I was very disappointed not to see Chalamet, even though Riley did try to explain to me why that would happen, and I didn't listen to him. So I was very disappointed about that. I was very disappointed about Nicole Kidman, who was giving amazing performances and missed both, even though I was predicting her to miss both. And I think we have to talk about Emily Blunt, who missed in lead and in supporting. I think it's going to be very difficult for her to ever get an Oscar nomination. I feel very bad for her this morning.
Why do Oscar voters just not like Emily Blunt? Like the SAG voters love her. Oscar voters don't want to know about her. I don't get it. Just don't get it.
Even though
Well, I'll say. Oh, go ahead, Luca.
No, you can go ahead.
No, you finish up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest issues this year, and I think we saw that with Kidman and with Blunt, is if you're nominated in two different categories, in two different acting categories, that it's very likely that they split the vote, where some people said they would nominate Emily Blunt for A Quiet Place in supporting, and then some said they're going to vote for her in Poppins in lead. And some people may not want to vote for the same performance or for the same performer twice, and I think that's probably the biggest problem for them.
So, Zach, what about you? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'll say I predicted that Bradley Cooper was going to miss in director and that Timothée Chalamet was going to miss in supporting actors. So I'm not too disappointed about that just because I got it right. And I mean, we should, like, in all fairness to both of them, like Bradley Cooper did get 3 Oscar nominations this year for that movie. So, I mean, he did get recognized. I do understand the, disappointment of him not being recognized for directing, but, he did get in for acting and writing and producing it. Timothée Chalamet is all of about 16 or 17 years old, so he's got plenty of time to get plenty of Oscar nominations before, and for movies that are, quite frankly, much more universally acclaimed than the one that he was up for. So, I am disappointed about Emily Blunt, just because, I mean, she's got to feel like Jennifer Jason Leigh at this point. Like, what more does she have to do to get nominated? Because she's been snubbed over and over again, even though she's gotten in at Golden Globes and SAG multiple times. And I think that in her specific case, Chris Beecham brought this up, and I think there was enough people who thought that she was a lead in A Quiet Place, that they perhaps voted for her there. And so I think that some category confusion probably led to that. And also, I mean, if you look at how both of her films performed overall, it's not that surprising, that she would have been left out. The one disappointment I have is, Ethan Hawke being left out for First Reformed. I knew that was going to happen, but I stuck by him just because I figured maybe, actors would rally behind him. But instead, I mean, on the positive note, they did go for Willem Dafoe for At Eternity's Gate, which I really wanted to predict, but I thought was even more of a long shot considering that, the studio that released that movie has gone out of business, and they released that movie for all of like 5 days, and so I think kudos to the actors for recognizing him for that.
When I saw Paul Schrader's nomination in screenplay, I immediately used that.
Me too.
That's cool. We know that Paul Schrader is not the most popular writer in the history of Hollywood, and yet he made it in because obviously it's undeniable that the screenplay for that film is quite amazing. Riley, what were you disappointed about?
Well, I'll just say about Paul Schrader. I mean, he won the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Writers Guild 19 years ago, back in the 90s. So it took him this long to get an Oscar nomination. Yeah, it's too bad about Bradley Cooper. I mean, here it says he was passionate, emotional, and fearless, and there he is looking sad. But yeah, it did not work out for him. I'm also disappointed about A Star is Born missing editing. I don't know why it didn't show up at BAFTA or the Oscars in editing. It's very showy work. I thought it would have been deserving of a win even. And not normally something that would be notable, but it missed sound editing while Bohemian Rhapsody got in. So A Star is Born is, really over in this race.
Yeah.
It's so strange because just speaking about Bradley Cooper, I remember months ago we were talking about how many Oscars is he going to win? Will it be 4? Will it be 5? Could he win for The Mule as well? But I don't think. In a way, maybe this might help him win actor. Because. But I don't think it's necessarily a Ben Affleck type scenario because we forget that Ben Affleck really got snubbed across the board except for in picture. And so there was like a sense of, let's give him the one thing we can possibly give him. Bradley Cooper, the poor guy, he's just sort of, I say poor guy, and I mean, he's a huge movie star and has a bright directing career in front of him. But, he's just sort of, he's like he's in third place in actor behind Bale and Malik. He's like in third or fourth place in screenplay, and now his film is just low in the best picture ranks. So it really is gonna take a miracle for him to win anything this year. But
a few weeks ago, even 2 weeks ago, prior to PGA, I was even touting that A Star is Born wasn't dead yet. Everybody calm down. We need to wait and see what happens at PGA, and then we need to wait and see what happens on Oscar nominations morning. I can now finally admit A Star is dead. And I don't think it's happening for that film. What I would like to bring up, and I think we can just open this up, guys. You can all just speak up now about what you hate, what you love, what you think's going to win, what you don't think's going to win. But first of all, the actors went on a limb for various people like Willem Dafoe and Marina di Tavera and even Yalitza Aparicio, but they just couldn't find room for Toni Collette. And I know I keep going on about this over and over again, but I just could not ignore that she did miss out, and I'm very disappointed for a performance like that. I think that's her best performance ever, and she's such a respected actress and she misses out. But that's because actress was so stacked. Which is really good news because Emily Blunt missed out too for Mary Poppins Returns, and there's a bunch of other women who didn't make the cut either. So they went out on a limb somewhere in some places, but in other cases they kind of left out people that deserved to be there. So that was slightly disappointing. And the other thing I'll mention, and then I'll just open it up, is so Netflix kind of didn't do so well with a couple of their films like Annihilation and Dumplin', but geez, they really killed it with Roma and Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I mean, kudos to them. That's a big hurdle for them to cross. It's a streaming service. There's a lot of bias against them. They're kind of taking over Hollywood and they're kind of taking over the world. And they are probably in for a Best Picture win now. And that is, just imagine someone telling you that 5 years ago, even. You would have been like, you would have laughed at them. And here we are. So I've got other things to talk about, but just what do you guys think? Just whoever talks first.
However, Netflix has lost their stronghold in documentary. They didn't get documentary feature for Shirkers, and they didn't get a nomination for Zion, which had won the International Documentary Association Award.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's, documentary as always surprised us. It's funny when they announced of Fathers and Sons, I think was the second to last one that they said, I thought, oh, well, I guess RBG is getting snubbed. And no, it was Won't You Be My Neighbor? It's 2 years in a row, the film that won, that wins the most awards for documentary ends up not making the cut. I think, they really do hate financially successful documentaries. And I mean, it's kind of boggles my mind because, I mean, you would think that, these films making money at the box office, that's a good thing. Three Identical Strangers, that was left off as well. That was a huge hit. RBG was, a good moneymaker, and so was, Free Solo's doing pretty well. But, aside from that, they just sort of ignored any kind of financial success. And they've been doing this for decades, It kind of blows my mind.
I'm glad that they nominated Minding the Gap, because at least Netflix misses out, but Hulu makes it in, and that's pretty cool. Minding the Gap for me was just like a revelation. So thank God that when I saw that come up, I actually breathed a sigh of relief out loud. I was, oh, phew. I'm really glad that made it in. And same for RBG, because everyone was thinking, RBG was on the cusp. So, sorry, Luca, what were you going to say?
I just think our Gold Derby frontrunner again was snubbed, so I'm just curious to see who wins Best Documentary now. I haven't seen any of the documentaries, so the race is just very interesting. I was shocked though to see Three Identical Strangers and Won't You Be My Neighbor snubbed. I was shocked. I think my live stream got stuck right then, and then right after I saw all the documentary nominees, and I was like, what the heck, honestly.
I'm concerned that people will see RBG on the ballot, and it'll be as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think the only competition it really has is Free Solo, just because that is a really good documentary and very cinematic, and they've been playing it currently in IMAX cinemas to sort of cash in on that kind of scope that it has. But you're right, Riley. I mean, they tend to just kind of go with whatever seems the most relevant out of the five, and if nothing else, they might just want to do it because they think it might add an extra 5 or 6 years to her life. So, knock on wood, as the person who lives in America on this video chat.
Yeah, we're praying for you.
Yeah, I'm really. I mentioned the below the line nominations for Black Klansman, and that means that two people who've worked with Spike Lee for a long time, Terrence Blanchard and Barry Alexander Brown, finally get some recognition. Barry Alexander Brown, funny enough, is actually a former nominee for documentary feature way back in the day before he became a film editor, but this is the first time he's ever been nominated for editing. I think that kind of bodes well for Black Klansman's chances overall. I mean, I know it missed John David, but it did get in Adam Driver, so there's some support in the acting branch. I mean, I could see it kind of winning a few awards and giving Roma a run for its money, especially because I think Alfonso's main competition and director is still Spike Lee. If they get a narrative going that no Black filmmaker has ever won for directing, even when their films have won for Best Picture, it could really it could make it more of a race.
I think SAG Ensemble is their last chance to prove themselves.
Yeah.
That's pretty soon.
Yeah. I agree.
I also think Vice overperformed. I mean, it got into all the categories it needed to get into. And while I don't think it'll win Best Picture because it'll have a lot of number 8 votes, I'm assuming, since it was such a polarizing movie, I do think it needs to be talked about with its 8 nominations. Even though I do think Roma will end up taking this despite the editing snub. And I think every presumed frontrunner missed something. I mean, A Star is Born missed editing and it missed director. Roma missed editing. I think, did The Favorite miss anything?
The Favorite and Vice are pretty much the only films that got in everywhere they needed. I mean, I guess theoretically you could say The Favorite missed Nicholas Hoult, but nobody, that was a long shot. So those two films are the ones. It's funny because those are the two films that are the most polarizing, I think. And yet they're the ones who got in everywhere they needed to get in. I think that, with Vice, I think that it's not going to win Best Picture, but I do think it could win up to 3 awards.
I think it could win 5.
5, okay. Because I think it'll win Makeup, Bale, Amy Adams. At this point, it's The Favorite in editing with all those snubs. And, The Favorite is a divisive movie, and it has been really underperforming in the screenplay race. So that one's actually pretty open. If there's enough passion votes, Adam McKay could win again, since he's already won in that category. Well, we do need to, speaking of original screenplay, we do need to talk about Green Book, which was the Producers Guild and Golden Globe winner. That missed in director, but I don't think that really hurts it because, nobody was really expecting Peter Farrelly to win Best Director. And, it did get into editing over Roma and A Star is Born. I don't think it's going to win editing, but, I think it's still in this race to win Best Picture, and it could walk away with.
I have a
Say
feeling
what?
that Green Book's, I think I have a slight feeling that Green Book slightly underperformed. It didn't really do so well on Below the Line.
Well, it got 5 nominations, which is what, like The Departed got, for instance.
Yeah.
Obviously, The Departed had a backstory going along with, Martin Scorsese and all that, and it was a much edgier film. But I think that, if you're looking at something that could, win on a preferential ballot, that just did. Mahershala is far and away the front runner right now to win supporting actor, and bad tweets or not, it still got into screenplay, and it could end up being the victor there, especially since Riley, as you said, the favorite has struggled to win in there. I would love for First Reform to win, but that's a real long shot. In Roma, you just have to ask yourself, like, how many Oscars are they really going to give to Alfonso Cuarón in the same night? Especially for a movie that, has very little dialogue to it and is so much about the directing. So I think that, Green Book is still kind of a threat. I'd say it's at least got to be in the top 3 or 4.
So 2 things I'd like to talk about, if we can, is supporting actress briefly, because I'm wondering, is Regina King really now really not going to happen because Beale Street did underperform, unfortunately? Because the no SAG nomination and Beale Street underperforming does hurt her. And is this now just going to be Amy Adams make an Oscar, or can Marina de Tavira be like a out of the blue winner, or would one of the favorites win? Like, this category is giving me a lot of heartburn.
I think BAFTA and SAG need to split for Regina King to still have a chance, because I think people, before the nominations came out, people said Beale Street would need to be a Best Picture nominee and SAG and BAFTA would need to split. So her last chance is really if SAG and BAFTA do split. And I'm not sold on Amy Adams for SAG yet. It just, I don't know, no one seems to want to award her. And BAFTA, I don't know, Rachel Weisz could win. So I'm not sure. I still have Regina winning the Oscar, but I do think that Adams is in second, and I don't know who's in third. Rachel Weisz, perhaps, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to, unless SAG and BAFTA do go for the same person and it ends up being like an obvious person, like a Rachel Weisz. Amy Adams, the fact that Weisz did overperform could bode well for her. But again, I mean, it just depends on, like, is that the performance that people really want to reward her career for? It could very well be. I mean, they could just go for it. But I do like your Marina de Tavira, especially considering that Roma could be the Best Picture winner, and so it stands to reason that it could take along an acting winner as well. The problem is we haven't seen her get up and give an acceptance speech yet.
No.
Yeah, I think the industry snubs are too damning for Regina King. It doesn't really matter if SAG or BAFTA lines up or not. I think SAG will be somewhat easily Amy Adams just by default, because it's not going to be either of the ones that weren't nominated for the Oscar. And the favorite women will split more than they will at BAFTA, because Rachel Weisz won't have the home advantage. And I assume that BAFTA will just go the same way again because of vote splitting, but who knows?
Can we now just talk about Roma? So Roma did very well, and we know it's going to win some awards, but I can't get past still that it is a Netflix film in black and white, foreign language. It's going to win foreign language film. Will the membership also, on a preferential ballot, also give it the big prize? I'm toing and froing here, and that's why I'm still thinking Black Klansman and The Favourite and Vice are still in this little bubble of films that might have a chance in the next few weeks to kind of change the narrative or something to maybe take it to Roma. So I'm very interested to know what you all think about Roma winning Best Picture. Are any of you so confident that you're saying straight away, forget about all the negative arguments, it's going to win?
No.
I mean,
I don't know.
I should jump up and down at the prospect of a black and white foreign language film winning the Oscar for Best Picture. I mean, that would be something that would be like a dream come true, but I'm still not entirely sold on it. I think that there's a lot of obvious support for it. But, I just saw a report today about how, AMC, they do their annual showcase of all the Oscar Best Picture nominees, and they, made a big deal about not including Roma in that lineup. And so, I mean, that still shows a bit of resistance to the future of the Oscars, if you will. Because, I mean, at a certain point, these kinds of movies are going to find a safe haven at Netflix predominantly. Like the future of theatrical exhibition is largely things like Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, Stars Born. And, so these smaller, more esoteric, more intimate films are going to have to go to places like Netflix or cease to exist. But I still think there's some resistance, to rewarding that. And I do think like Black Klansman is definitely still in this, and I think Green Book is still in this. I would say those are like my top 3 picks right now. The Favorite, I know it overperformed, but I think it's too weird. It's going to be like Grand Budapest Hotel, I believe. So that's my thoughts on it.
I think something to watch out for going forward is last year, Darkest Hour kind of underperformed everywhere except for BAFTA, and then it way overperformed at the Oscars. And the same thing happened with The Favorite, where it's been missing various nominations or not winning kind of easy awards, and then it just hits everything at the Oscars. So we must not underestimate the British bloc that we always talk about.
Yeah.
And I wonder also, now that we have 3 years of the new membership, where in a lot of branches, a quarter of the voters were not voting for the Oscars before 3 years ago. So maybe now next year we'll have those 3 years of data, and maybe we should not really be even considering anything that happened before that in terms of nomination statistics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Roma is the front runner at the moment, but I do think the 2 acting nods, and then it got into both sound categories, which is also important. I do think that demonstrates strength for that movie, but I do think, Zach, like you said, that Green Book is a real threat. I think a lot of people were writing it off due to all the controversies, but we saw that I don't think the Academy cares about the controversies, or not that much at least, and I do think that has a path to the win. And then A Stars Born is probably dead. I don't think it has that much of a chance anymore. I think a lot of people were talking about Bohemian Rhapsody after it got the Globe and then that PGA nom, but I don't think that's happening. So I think Klansman, Green Book, and Roma are also my top 3.
Yeah, Rhapsody kind of underperformed ultimately. Yeah, I mean all of that film Twitter pulling out their hair and all that, and it's go, and that and Green Book just ended up with the same number of nominations. Yeah, I think that it kind of hurts Rami Malek's chances of winning now too. That it sort of underperformed,
and people have been losing their minds over Bohemian Rhapsody and Green Book, especially in film Twitter and the blogosphere. I think the bubble needs to be burst a little, and people need to see that there are issues with both of those films, but they're actually very, very beloved. And even though they underperformed, as you guys have kind of already alluded to, they both still may pull a win out here and there. There's a couple of other little things that are just kind of doing my head in. So I would have said one of the top 5 locks of the day would have been First Man in Score, and that missed. Although there was a little bit of precedent for that missing, it missed a couple of little hurdles, but I couldn't believe that score missing. That's one of my favourite scores of the year, which is irrelevant, but I thought it was a shoo-in. So now looking at the nominees, the others were all pretty much we all expected, and I think we need to not underestimate like Ludwig Göransson for Black Panther. I really think people are underestimating him, but wouldn't it be great to see Terence Blanchard win for Black Klansman? That would be very, very cool.
That's who I'm rooting for, and who I might actually predict. I mean, because not for nothing, that and Black Panther are the only 2 Best Picture nominees in the category. I don't think they're going to give it to Desplat a second year in a row, and I think also, Black Klansman is nominated at BAFTA, so if it wins there, then I think that we may have to put it in our frontrunner spot.
If it beats A Star Is Born for music,
you mean A Star Is Dead? Yeah, no, that is surprising. First Man overall seemed to. I think a lot of people got their hopes up that it would overperform and possibly get into Best Picture, but as soon as she missed out, I thought, well, so much for that.
Really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought people were overestimating it, so I didn't have clairvoy or visual effects or sound mixing, but it ended up being, editing and score, and I think something else that it missed instead. So
yeah,
it did not help my prediction score.
Got a weird roundup there. So
I think Nicholas Britell will probably. I mean, I'm hoping Nicholas Britell wins for Beale Street in score. I mean, he also did Vice, so maybe that helps him as well. But I don't know. I think a lot of people were debating whether Britell or Hurwitz would win, and since Hurwitz is not in the running anymore, I'm hoping it's Britell. But I do think that Blanchard could also win for Klansman, and Black Panther could win too. I mean, this category is wide open now.
Yeah, strong category.
Something to remember about these below the line categories is that, on the ballot, they don't list the names of the people who are actually nominated. It just lists the film.
Yeah.
And so, that does, people really do have to love the score for Beale Street, for instance, if they're going to mark it down. I think that, more often than not, with very rare exception, they just tend to go for whatever is nominated for Best Picture so that they can kind of spread the wealth a little bit. But, we have seen instances like that weird Fantastic Beasts costume design win from 2 years ago that threw us for a loop. So, I don't think it's open and shut. You mentioned Black Panther. I do want to talk about that because I thought that would underperform. A lot of people thought it would overperform, and it performed just kind of right in the middle. I think it got 7 or 8 nominations. If I'm
good. You did well.
All of them below the line, except for Best Picture. So.
And thank God it made it into Best Picture. Otherwise, it would have been such a outcry.
And you know what? Doesn't this prove the point that you don't need Best Popular Film?
Yes.
You've got 3 movies in the running, from what I can count, that are huge populist entertainments and box office smashes, competing alongside things like Roma and Black Klansman and Vice. So, you don't need it. Now we just have to see if those 70 million people are going to tune in or not to see all of Black Klansman's awards get presented during commercial breaks.
I really hope they drop.
So bad.
That's really upsetting me because there's so much to look forward to in these nominations, so much rich cinematic stuff that we can chew on, and we're not even going to get to see it, which is very, very upsetting.
Well, there's still time for them to course correct.
I mean, Black Panther was snubbed in visual effects, but I think a lot of people were actually predicting that because visual effects were one of the weaker links of the movie.
Robin, most of us thought Christopher Robin.
Well, that did show up at the Visual Effects Society and at the Annie Awards, of all places.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they kind of all showed up at the Visual Effects Society, though,
except for Black Panther.
Which is too bad because people crying about how Marvel never wins Best Visual Effects. I think they needed Black Panther in there to finally win it, because now that First Man is in there instead, and it's the most Best Picture-y, I think that'll just be an easy winner.
Like an ex machina. I also just was saying when we last got together, I mentioned that makeup and hairstyling has become the Sweden category, and boredom made it again. Another Swedish film made it into this category. I don't know what the hell is going on with that group of voters, but they just like Swedish films. So
it's
not like they're all of the same quality either. Some are better than others, but all the Swedish movies get in.
I'll get it.
Yeah, and another freaking Queen Elizabeth movie too.
I know. So. Jenny Sherkor again. She won for Elizabeth, and here she's again doing similar work. Such a long time after her first win, so that's really interesting. And I was also just going to mention because from personal bias, I love Cold War, and I can't get it out of my head. I only saw it a few days ago, and I'm so happy that film at least got those 3 nominations. It's not probably going to win because I think Roma is going to beat it in all 3 categories. But it would make me very happy if the Academy could maybe see fit to maybe give Cold War something. And if anything, it should probably win for me, cinematography. But yeah, I was really happy. That's just another example of international films really doing well with the Academy, and that's all testament to the membership and how it has really opened up, which is great.
And it's been a while since they had, 2 foreign language films, not just international filmmakers, but like films with subtitles nominated for Best Director. Since 1976 was the last time, I believe it was like Ingmar Bergman and Lena Wertmuller. So it's been a minute. And, this is the second instance since the expanded field that we've had a lone director nomination, which is also pretty cool because, I think very often we just kind of discount that, these people like Pawlikowski and Bennett Miller for Foxcatcher before him can actually compete. But, as we see over and over again, the director's branch is going to do what they want to do. They are the mavericks of the Academy, if you will.
Both Cannes director winners.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, a good showing for Cannes too, because also Black Klansman had its big first hurrah there, won second place, and Shoplifters as well. Palme d'Or winners nominated.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thinking about diversity in the acting categories, there are 2 African American nominees, 2 nominees from Mexico. There's some Brits. There's an American who has Egyptian heritage. I think we can say that these nominees are diverse enough. What do you think? Do we think? I mean, there's been other years where there's been a lot more Black actors, but I think we're okay. We know when you're an Oscars so white scenario. Do we all agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that also the Academy is not trying to overcompensate either with nominating John David Washington, who I know you guys are a fan of. But on the other hand, they nominated Willem Dafoe. I thought kind of overdid it in his movie. So,
Yeah.
I'll say for diversity, I think that, as one of 4 white people on the panel, it's really the fact that, there was a snub for John David Washington, but also there was still a strong showing for non-white actors. I think it speaks to, the fact that in the last few years, Hollywood has done a better job of, having roles for people of color, because that's where it starts. Like, if the roles aren't there, then there's nothing to nominate. And, I mean, you've got a lot of films like Beale Street, Black Panther, Black Klansman, Roma that, are, show the full rainbow of America. And that's really wonderful that they're all competing.
Yeah.
I just wish we now had more female representation, at least in the directing category. Right. Because I think a lot of people were saying that Marielle Heller for Can You Forgive Me was deserving, or Deborah Granick, or Lynn Ramsey. It's not like there weren't choices for female directors or that female directors didn't direct good movies. It's just that they don't get the opportunity to, shine and get these nominations, at least not this year. There was no Greta Gerwig this year.
Well, yeah,
really polished that got a lot of recognition. I do think that's a shame, but the director lineup is, I think, good. I think most people are satisfied with most choices. Good.
I think a lot of that also stems from, our pal Sasha Stone over at Awards Daily talks about this a lot, about how, the people who write about movies, they prop up somebody like a Greta Gerwig. Really, they've just like plucked her as one out of a year that also included, Catherine Bigelow and Sofia Coppola and Dee Reese. Same thing this year. Nobody plucked it, anybody out and propped them up and said, this is the person that you should pay attention to. And so I think, that just sort of speaks to the way that people write about movies. And also, the kind of opportunities that are given to women directors. There was no want for quality films made by women this year. It's just none of them got singled out. And, I think that's, I think that that's something that we should continue to, fight for. But again, like you said, it's hard to like single out one of the 5 directors and say, you're the one who, is holding us back.
But speaking of singling out, Speaking of singling out, I was dreaming before I woke up to watch these announcements that they decided to put a quota system in, and I'm wondering, like, in comedy directing at the Emmys, you have to have a director that has directed a multicam. Like, why did they just do something? Well, I mean, we have female actor and male actor categories. Then they've got to do something about this, surely, in directing.
I think you just have to have more opportunities for women to
More
direct movies
opportunity.
that get nominated for Oscars.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's it's the same thing with people of color, people in the LGBTQ community. There's always going to be like they only have 5 slots to fill, so there's always going to be some representation that is not making it in every year. I think we just need to have more opportunities for people to make the kinds of films that win Oscars.
Or Asian representation, we didn't get
Yeah.
Asians
Yeah,
or
that's so
Turkers, but we did get 3 out of 5 slots in animated short.
That's great. Something to hold on to.
Unfortunately, the best Asian-centric animated short did not make it in, though. So those short categories, I have no idea what happened there. I tried to watch as many as I could, and they didn't match the Gold River predictions. They didn't match my predictions. They were a third group somehow.
Yeah, Bilby missed out, which really disappoints me. Speaking of Asians, Crazy Rich Asians didn't make it in and at all. So it's one of the films of the year that got no representation, like Mission Impossible Fallout and, in my opinion, Hereditary. Crazy Rich Asians completely forgotten by the Academy. Yeah, Widows, films like that a lot of us love get nothing. Very sad, but it is what it is, right? I think real diversity would be a bit more like, it doesn't have to just necessarily be a couple of African American actors. I think an Asian actor would be nice. I think it would be nice to see, all kinds of as Zach said, a rainbow of people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, sexual orientation, whatever. And unfortunately, we're still not there yet. And that is all obviously about opportunity. It's not necessarily the Academy's fault.
And I do wonder sometimes if like having a limit of 5 slots sort of hinders them in that as well, because I feel as though like a film like Crazy Rich Asians was probably in like 7th or 8th place in a couple of spots, or like maybe maybe Mario Heller did get enough votes to be like in 7th place, and so I don't know. Maybe they should do it like the Emmys do it, and have just a few more slots to create more opportunities.
Ties or something, yeah.
Even films like A Quiet Place was so close to getting 0 nominations, even though it was theoretically competitive in several.
I think Best Picture might have been in like the 10, 11, 12 spot as well.
Screenplay, Emily Blunt.
Yeah, screenplay, Emily Blunt.
I mean, I can have up to 10 Best Picture nominees, so you wonder if they have ever considered just like having more than 5 slots for every other. Yeah,
I don't know what having 8 or 9 nominees has accomplished, really. Like we still got extremely loud and incredibly close. So. and Bohemian Rhapsody too. So.
And I do have one question. Do we all think Glenn Close is winning actress?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
Wow.
I think Lady Gaga will win the SAG, and then Olivia Colman will win the BAFTA and the Oscar. I do not want to underestimate the British bloc again.
Okay, that would be huge, because
So Glenn Close is done.
I can't see that. It's her turn.
Those 99 people have all started voting for Glenn Close. That's what's and there's one person voting
for Globe speech anyway, so go out on a high.
I think they're gonna give Gaga a song and then they'll give Glenn actress. I don't know. I feel like it's her time. That Golden Globes just solidified her front runner position in that race. I do think Coleman and Gaga are definitely in 2nd and 3rd. I don't know who's in 2nd and who's in 3rd, but they do have a strong chance. And I think SAG will be very important. Whoever wins SAG will win the Oscar, in my opinion.
Okay, completely unimportant. Also a lead actor.
There's definitely a path where like Gaga can win at SAG, especially considering that they merged with AFTRA, and so like your local radio personality is now voting for Best Actress. But at the same time, those same people might just want to, do what they did last year and just vote for whoever won the Golden Globe and Critics' Choice. So, we shall see. There might not be any more suspense left, especially if they can find a way to write in Regina King's name in some of these.
I know, right?
I also think Bale might take actor at SAG, and then if he takes actor at SAG, then the Oscar, he's definitely winning the Oscar. What are your? I'm not sure if Bale or Malik will win SAG. I think that's one of the big questions. It's hard to tell, yeah.
SAG is very important now. Like once we get SAG and then obviously BAFTA, we will have a better idea. But at this stage of the race, I think actor is very open, open, and even actors to a certain extent, because those two precursors are going to really kind of funnel all of these opinions into kind of one single person if they happen to do quite well over the next couple of weeks. It's at the moment though, I'm puzzled. I'm not predicting anything yet until those two things happen.
Hmm.
I don't think we're going to do a separate video about that. So I'll just say that I think that this year we have films that are much more popular than the films that normally get nominated at SAG, and I think that'll skew the results. So we'll see Black Panther, win ensemble, and Rami Malek win actor, but I wouldn't think that any of those would necessarily translate to the Academy, where they're a much more elite set of voters.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some question about, like, because I hear a lot of SAG members say they're voting for Bohemian Rhapsody in ensemble, and I mean, like, they could also be voting for Crazy Rich Asians just because they've all seen the movie, So yeah, I mean, who knows? SAG probably might not tell us anything, but it might just tell us exactly what we needed to hear. But
yeah. So final thoughts, guys, before we finish up for the day. Just what's your takeout from today's big announcement? We're still digesting, obviously, but go ahead. Who wants to go first?
Anybody but me.
I guess I can go first. Well, one thing that I took from these nominations is that if you don't make a showing at the box office, or if you didn't make a showing at the box office this year, your Oscar chances were very low, as we saw with First Man and Widows, both of which had the same Metacritic score, very high Metacritic score, and critical reception in general. And First Man still got 4 nominations, and Widows was completely shut out.
Beale Street.
So I thought, Beale Street with 3 nominations, which is sad. And I just think, and we see Bohemian Rhapsody, A Star Is Born, we see Black Panther, we see these big popular box office hits making it into Best Picture and a lot of other categories. I think that's something to look at for the next few years. And I hope that that kills the idea of this Best Popular Film category, because it's ridiculous. And I hope the Academy makes some changes in the next year, because it's been a mess the last year.
To say the least. You noticed the Academy president didn't come out and introduce the presenters this year. So,
I mean, that was odd.
Did you guys like those presenters?
I mean, it was it was fine, I guess. I mean, I always like having the I'm old school. I like having the little faces pop up. So it was just like, it was like right between. It was a step above that stupid public service announcement that they did a couple of years ago, the last year that Chow Isaacs was president. And it was like less annoying than that SAG nomination with Niecy Nash and Olivia Munn, I think it was. So, yeah, it was, whatever. I was barely awake for it.
I think Tiffany Haddish really stuffed up last year, and the mispronunciation of names, I don't really find that very amusing. That's my opinion.
No.
But I found Kamal and who was the other? Who was the
Tracy Ellis Ross.
Yeah, I just felt like saying after a while, okay, guys, we get it. You got up early. Can we just focus, please? Because I don't care about your jokes. Just read the shit. Because
there's a lot of whining, which is weird because actors, they wake up early anyway for long days of shooting. I thought they would have been used to it. Yeah. Plus, they were warned, that they would be getting up early.
Right.
It's like, hey, I'm running on fumes myself, folks. All right.
Yeah, I'm about to drop dead, but let's not worry about that. Okay, so are you guys all pretty much done for today?
I'll say some final thoughts
Yeah,
framed
please.
around editing. So editing is my favorite category because of its potential. Except for last year, though, it always disappoints me. I'm very sad to see Mission Impossible not in there. And we talked a lot about how Roma might miss because the editing is not flashy. It's like Birdman kind of ish. But I don't think we were expecting Roma to miss and for Green Book to get in. I mean, Green Book we saw win the Producers Guild, but it felt like one of those movies like Little Miss Sunshine or Brokeback Mountain that didn't really have the showiest editing. And you think maybe, this could be one of the years in which they don't line up. So that's a significant snub and nomination there. So I wonder what that means.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And for me, I usually, after I've digested all the shocks and all the things that I love and all the surprises and blah blah blah, then I start thinking, okay, because I try to see as many films as possible, like most of you and most people watching, but there's always a couple that I've missed. So now I look and think, all right, so now I'm desperate to see Never Look Away. And I'm going to go and have a watch of The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I kind of decided not to bother with that one, but I will be watching it now. And there's a couple of others that I haven't seen yet, so that I can then say that I've seen everything and I'm completely informed about what's being nominated. And that's kind of one of the little OCD things that I do. So I'm sure you're all in the same boat, but that's where I'm literally going to go and see if I can find a screen if I Never Look Away, like straight away, and just watch it as soon as possible. Because getting Caleb Deschanel and the cinematography just really excites me. That's really cool.
Zach, have you seen it?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. It's really great.
What's special about the cinematography?
I mean, it's just incredibly it's like old school, kind of like old Hollywood, beautiful lighting. You know what I mean? Like, plus it's from a 5-time Oscar nominee.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, if you look at my interview on Gold Derby with the director Florian Hinkel van Donnersmarck, he made special note to talk about Caleb Deschanel's work in this film. So yeah,
it worked. Okay, well that's now. There'll be lots more on Gold Derby as usual, all the way up to the lead up to the Oscars, and we'll no doubt be back once a few of the other industry groups have weighed in with their choices, and we'll come back then to see whether any of our predictions or thoughts about the Oscar race have changed. Thanks everyone for joining us.